Hey there, soccer freaks. This is ATL on Fire, the podcast where we talk all things Atlanta United Football Club. So sit back, buckle up, enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of ATL on Fire. We are joined by Dave Katz out in Seattle, joined by his cousin Dave as well. And he is a Seattle fan, and appreciate him joining the podcast to give us a little bit of perspective from the other side of the coast. And
yeah, we're making a West Coast swing.
Absolutely. So what have you guys been up to out in Seattle?
We've been, visiting. We visited Portland. We visited Seattle. Now we're in wine country. So you want to tell them a little bit about the wine?
Yeah. So so you're drinking that's a local wine from Walla Walla. It's a Chardonnay from Savaya Cellars, and we're members of that wine club, and it's a great area, Walla Walla. And the whole Yakima Valley, Columbia Valley, highly recommend all the wines from it.
I have to say, we had a Walla Walla wine at our wedding from Waterbrook. So, this is near and dear to my heart. That's wine country.
Well, that's awesome.
What are you drinking, Mikey Dog?
I am randomly as well, literally drinking a Pinot Gris Villa Wolf, which I hardly ever drink white wine, but it was the only thing we had, so I went with it. Yeah, but I can't wait to do a wine trip out west with my wife. We've been talking about that forever, so we'll have to ring you up and get some recommendations for sure.
Yeah, you can't just go to Napa and Sonoma. You got to come up to Willamette in Portland or to Washington wine country.
Yeah, Willamette Valley Pinots are one of my favorites. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, did you make it there when you were on this trip?
Yeah, not this trip, but we've been the last time we were here. We're out visiting my wife's sister, so we've been to Portland a couple of times. And the last time we were out here, we went to the Willamette. It was great.
Awesome. Well, we had a soccer game last night for Atlanta United, Dave. I don't know if you were able to watch it. It was blacked out.
Hopefully we don't want to talk about that, right? We just want to jump right into a better team in Seattle.
I'm gonna go into my rant, which I think it may have been a rant in the past, which is I miss my cable bill that went up. It was like $240 and just went up. At least I could watch what I wanted to watch. Now I'm crying uncle on all the apps that I forget how to log into, and then like jumping through hoops. It's exhausting. I was so frustrated trying to figure out how to watch the game. And
to fill in my cousin David here, in Atlanta, there's wars going on between our Fox Sports network and all of the cut the cord, the YouTube television, Hulu, whatever. And so they've now put all the Fox Sports onto a new app called Bally Sports. It's awful. And nobody carries it. And they're playing chicken to see who blinks first, whether or not YouTube TV and all those things agree to pay them more first, or whether or not, they blink first. It's
and even the actual technical part of the broadcast is bad. It's like glitchy, and like they're always having problems sending a good signal from my experience as well. So hopefully Arthur Blank will have some sort of influence on that. I don't know.
So our away game situation at the moment is catastrophically bad. Nobody from Atlanta can even watch the away games. We only go to the stadium, and then when we're away, it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
So, dear podcast listener, if you're out there and you didn't get to see the game, that was probably a good thing.
Yeah. So about 40 minutes in or so, whenever they scored, it was like, already had given up. So I went back and watched the YouTube highlights.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Dave, if you were able to see it or see the highlights, but I have a couple notes. It was the goals were pretty bad in terms of the way we gave them up. The first one, Mo Adams, who's not a regular starter. I guess he was playing in Sosa's spot there. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, why was Sosa not available?
I don't know. Like I said, I didn't hear the broadcast, so I don't know what the reason is.
Actually, this is a good moment we can bring in David. So at Atlanta United, one of our big criticisms of the club is they give us zero information about injuries. So I believe that Sosa got injured in training, but they don't even tell you that. They're just like, oh, he didn't show up on the flight. right? They tell you nothing about the injury. Did they tell you stuff about injury?
Brian Schmetzer, the head coach for the Sounders, does press conferences here and there, and he'll tell you that someone's injured and they're on the mend. They're getting better, but you don't get a lot of details about what the injury is. So that
kind of
sounds pretty
sounds
similar. It's pretty similar. Yeah.
Ours is terrible. They're like, they'll have a player will be injured for months, and they're like, they don't tell you when they're coming back. They don't tell you what. We had one of our star players injured, and they didn't tell us for months even what the injury was. Like, they wouldn't even tell you what it was that he injured. Like, was it a hamstring? Was nothing.
Yeah. And that's even when you go to the press conferences, I mean, the fact that we have a Spanish speaking coach, it's a little hard to get through as well, because they do the double translation and double the so it's a little hard to watch the press conferences and have the patience too. But Mo Adams on that first goal basically just got beat man on man to begin with. And then if I recall, there's some other people didn't close down whoever the guy was who took the shot, and it deflected off somebody's foot and then kind of arced over Brad Guzan and went in. Is that right, Dave, if I'm remembering?
Yeah, it was a bad deflection. But I have to say, when I watched, I really thought that Antoine Walks was at 6th and 7th. Like, his ability to sense the danger in the back it's not good. So what do you got there?
Yeah, he's my next two, which is Anton Walks.
Let's hear it.
So the second goal, Anton Walks plays a terrible ball across the field.
That was really
that bad. Got easily poached, and then they came in and scored on that one. And then the third one was your classic point about Antoine Walks not reading the danger. It was a ball that got crossed over. He actually got back, and a guy ran behind him, and he literally never even knew the danger was behind him, and it went right over his head. And the other defender, whoever it was, Lennon or somebody trying to get back, couldn't catch up. But it was really Anton Walk's opportunity to read that danger and never even saw it go over his head to the other player. So he just got back into wasted space, and I think that was the third goal. So Anton Walks was not great in that game.
So I'm hoping for a 4th of July present that Alan Franco, our new Argentinian center back, turns out to actually be good and healthy and maybe play.
Yeah.
Because we need him.
And by the way, happy 4th of July. Did you guys see any fireworks last night or do anything?
No, they didn't have fireworks in Seattle. They got canceled.
Did they really?
Really? Oh.
I don't know whether it was COVID or whether, the fire danger is too high.
That's right. It's been crazy. It's been crazy hot in Seattle, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been very, very hot and dry. They announced that they would be showing old fireworks shows on television, which is not the same.
I think I did that to the kids over New Year's. I played like last year's dropping of the thing just to get them into bed. And I did that at like 10 p.m. instead of midnight. And that was my trick. So
clever. And once they hear this though, a few years, they're going to be angry.
Yeah, I know, but it was worth it. So
Did they have fireworks in Atlanta?
Well, our neighborhood here in Avondale Estates puts on a pretty awesome show. So there's, a couple thousand people that get down by the lake here. And last night, I don't know if they had a surplus of fireworks from last year, but it was by far like the most epic fireworks finale that they've had. At one point, I actually thought something went wrong and the trees were on fire. That's how good it was. I mean, it really wasn't.
Yeah, it's good when you think the trees are on fire.
Yeah. But
all right, now let's get down to business. We got to get the Seattle perspective, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Seattle, who's second in the table, has
first.
Aren't they first?
First.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I went to my phone. They were second in the table. Maybe they were tied for number one. I don't know.
Actually, I don't know, they only tied last night, so it's possible they could have lost points.
Last time we disagreed with Google, Dave, we were wrong. So
I know.
I'm going by
so Mikey Dowds and I have been discussing this. So one of the things that's weird about MLS, and maybe you can comment. So most leagues around Europe and whatever, everybody plays on the same day. Typically Saturday, occasionally Sunday, right? And so the table gets updated, every weekend. But MLS, they have games all the time or whatever, so it's not synchronous. So somebody will play on a Tuesday and somebody will play on a Wednesday. And so when you look at the table, it's always what we call a live table, which is whoever, whatever the points are at this moment. And you can look and you don't know whether, Cincinnati's playing on a random Tuesday and they happen to, get points. So
yeah, they put Sporting ahead of Seattle.
Okay.
They had 8 wins and Seattle's only got 7, probably.
Yeah, because they played an extra game in hand.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
We still think Seattle's in first.
I absolutely do.
They haven't lost a match.
So
we also we have lost some matches.
So Dave, how long have you been a Seattle fan, and how did you become a fan of the soccer team?
So we've been season ticket holders since 2014, and I've been fans of the club since they were founded back in the late 2000s. 2009, I think, was their first season.
Okay.
And we followed them all throughout. My son played soccer, so we were a soccer family, and we always followed them. And so we've the first game that I ever went to was actually an exhibition game of the Sounders versus Chelsea when Chelsea came on one of their tours around so that was kind of fun to see. But we had some nosebleed seats. And my son was actually at the inaugural game of the opening season for the Sounders.
Wow.
So he actually has a scarf from the very first game that they handed out, and he was disappointed because the section we were in for the Chelsea game, we were sitting, and he's like, no, we should be standing. If you want to really take in a Sounders game, you have to be standing.
Yes.
And that's. When we as a family went to our first Sounders game, we made sure that we sat right by the Emerald City supporters, and we stood the whole game, and we chanted all of their chants to root on the team. And my wife became the hooligan of us. So she's the one that loves to drink beer at the games and sing all the songs and. That not necessarily the PG version of all the songs either.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack. I have a question. So we actually, in the inaugural season in Atlanta, everybody stood. But we've now become what, Roy Keane and Manchester United would call the prawn sandwiches type. That's the fancy elitist. We don't stand anymore.
That's
right.
lame.
I mean, the supporter section still does, but there used to be the entire stadium stood for every match.
So I would say it's at Lumen Field. I still call it CenturyLink because it's But the whole lower bowl, for the most part, everybody stands.
So Seattle plays at CenturyLink, the same stadium as Seahawks, right?
It's not called CenturyLink anymore.
But okay.
But yeah, it's the same place. And usually for Sounders games, it's just the lower bowl that they have open. The upper bowl is all blocked off. But they do have a few full stadium games, which are just intense.
What's max capacity when it's fully open?
Oh yeah, it's MLS Cup in 2019 was like 69,000
awesome.
Something like that. So I think we had
Atlanta United.
I was going to say, I think we had the stadium record until Atlanta came along.
Well, I will say that, that's a beautiful stadium. Like I've actually seen a Falcons game there, the 2016 season before we crashed and burned. Pass interference on Julio Jones, or we would have won that game. But a beautiful stadium for sure, and it's a cool.
Probably because the Atlanta fans were not standing, Mikey Dobbs.
Right.
Dear podcast listener, if you are an Atlanta United season ticket supporter, look to your left, look to your right, and tell everybody to get up.
I agree, 100%.
Like, come on, what happened? We had the whole stadium standing, and then people were like,
if there's one message we can get out there, it's stand up. Yes.
So that I think that's part of the Seattle atmosphere is the standing, and it's just so loud in there too. I mean that people know it from the Seahawks, the 12th man kind of thing too, but the Sounders bring it also. And when everybody is chanting the same thing together or singing together, it is super loud in there, and it's crazy. The atmosphere is just crazy.
Is it true that you can hear the Seattle Sounders game on the Richter scale? Because I've heard that in the stadium sometimes It gets so
I
loud
believe
and
it.
vibrant that it actually it registers on the Richter scale at the University of Washington, where they monitor earthquakes.
I believe it. The Seahawks games do, so I believe that the Sounders would too. Yeah.
Well,
So now my other question is this. So the other pet peeve that Mikey Dobbs and I have about Atlanta United. So we of course have our songs and whatever, but we maybe because we're Atlanta, maybe we're new, whatever, but we don't have individual player songs.
Yeah, no.
They're all about the team or just in general. Do you guys have individual songs for players?
We do. For the ones that I'd say not for everybody, but for the notable players, we do.
Yeah, of course.
So there's one for Stephen Fry, the goalie. There's one for there was one for Roman Torres, our center back from a couple of years ago. The star players certainly have them.
Yeah.
Yes,
so Atlanta United supporters group, if you're listening, why doesn't Joseph Martinez have a song? By the time he gets back from injury, I expect you guys to have an awesome tifo and song crafted up. So great point, Dave.
Otherwise, Mikey Dobbs and I are just going to have to make up all the songs, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, you don't want
and
that.
Even if it has to be just Mikey Dobbs and I singing the song ourselves, it'll be
We're not afraid. But one of the things about my Seattle football experience was, and I remember just being really jealous of that, like being on the train from the airport into the city, and then I stayed at a hotel downtown, and how cool it was to like walk down the street with everybody. Like it was fun being an outsider with my with my Falcons gear on. But I remember being like, wow, this is what a sporting event should be like. We really didn't have, Braves. I'm a huge Braves fan, but the whole atmosphere of getting into the game is like that has been missing in Atlanta sports. And Atlanta United changed that. So when we had the soccer team, it started off in Bobby Dodd Stadium, which is Georgia Tech's football stadium. It kind of kicked that off, that whole atmosphere of everybody taking the train in and everybody had their gear on. And so I feel like Atlanta United kind of shifted that in Atlanta, where people are coming in from all angles on the MARTA, and actually coming in from downtown, and it has that feel. And I remember, that experience in Seattle and finally getting that in Atlanta was a pretty cool thing to finally have. Dave, I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. But my question is, so like I've been to a number of matches in Europe, and it's very local, and everybody are at the pubs ahead of time or whatever. America has much more of a tailgating sort of tradition. So in Seattle, do you guys tailgate in the supporters section? Do you go to a pub? What do you do before games?
March to the match. Every game. So you meet down at Occidental Park, which is kind of near Pioneer Square in Seattle. I don't know, a half mile from the stadium or so. And ECS leads the way with there's a guy with a megaphone leading with songs and chants, and everybody gathers in the park, and we march to the stadium together, and we're singing. And for rivalry games, there's usually smoke bombs, which I don't think are necessarily allowed, but they're there anyway. But
who's the biggest
it's a
rival?
great atmosphere, though.
Portland?
It's a great atmosphere. Yeah.
Portland's the biggest rival?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I figured, yeah.
I mean, it's either, Portland is definitely the biggest rival, but, the Whitecaps also, the whole, the Cascadia Cup is.
Besides Atlanta.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The Cascadia Cup is, that's a huge thing. So that's the three teams, whichever one has the best record at the end of the year, gets awarded the Cascadia Cup, which is handed from fan club to fan club. Supporters group to supporters group.
So has Seattle ever not won that?
Oh yeah, they have. They have, absolutely. Yeah.
Because come on, Portland, Vancouver, you guys are way better than that.
Absolutely.
So it seems like, why do they even bother? Like, we just leave it permanently in Seattle.
So to say something nice about Atlanta. 2018, when you guys had your moments of glory there, you couldn't have beat a better team by beating Portland there. So how Portland got to the MLS Cup, we'll never know. But that's, as a Sounders fan, obviously we want the Sounders to win, but we always want Portland to lose. So thank you for doing that to them.
So Dave, what's your opinion on the quality of soccer since you started watching Seattle and the MLS, like how far has it progressed in your mind over the last 10, 20 years?
I don't know. I think it's I think the best test. I don't know if I necessarily can answer that with a real technical answer per se, but I can give the cliche answer in a sense that you look at all these European guys who think they're going to come to the MLS and retire, and they can't stand up to the pace and the way that the game is played out here. So we love watching people like Ibrahimovic last year or whenever that was. He came up to Seattle one time because Galaxy really needed to win because he never plays on turf, but he showed up and he played at CenturyLink, and to watch him struggle out there and see some of these guys think that they could just come to the MLS and play. I think it's a challenging league to play in. I think the caliber of soccer is really high.
Yeah, in the early days of the MLS, I mean, it was certainly the case that the biggest stars were, washed up European players. Donadoni for the Metro Stars. I mean, Valderrama was in the league for a while. Like, they were these guys who, were amazing players, but they were past it. But they could still dominate the MLS. So I think that's a really good point, that the league has gotten to the point where, actually it was
Higuain just a couple weeks ago.
Higuain who just said that, he came from Italy and he thought, okay, I can, ease up and just dominate this league. And he was surprised that he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good point.
Now, obviously, I like to see the hometown kids stay on the MLS teams, and to see them get drawn overseas to go play in Europe is also a testament to the caliber of soccer that they're playing. And it's really it's mixed emotions about seeing some of these hometown guys go over there to play. But the fact that they're able to be successful over there is also a testament. Right?
So how does, so in Atlanta, we sort of have been emphasizing that we're a seller club, that we're getting young players, particularly a pipeline from South America. They're coming to MLS, but those guys, their intention is to play for Atlanta for a year or two and then go overseas. We had a huge success with Al Marone, who came from South America, from Paraguay, and then is now at Newcastle, for example, in England. So how does Seattle, does it seem like that? Do you guys is that what your expectation is, that the players, or that the players are going to come to Seattle to then as a launching pad to go overseas, or do you think that they're just coming to Seattle to play in Seattle?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I really thought about that. I know that we have a bunch of homegrown guys. We have some 18 and 19-year-olds who have grown up through the academy system in the Seattle area. But we also tend to attract a lot of South American players as well. And they tend to just stay in Seattle. They play out their careers here. So,
and you guys had a disaster, right? Because Jordan Morris, right, was a Seattle. I mean, you can probably fill this in, but he was a Seattle player, and then he went to England.
Yeah.
Right, as like a loan deal.
As a loan deal, got injured over there. Yeah.
That's the worst case.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we
have
his
other ACL.
We got a young homegrown guy, George Bello, who started getting regular starts at 17. He's 19 years of age now, Dave. And now I think during the summer transfer window, there's actually serious rumors of him being traded to a Turkish team, I've heard.
But see, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I mean, I think of that, if it turns out that we're selling to secondary leagues in Europe, like Turkey, and no offense to anybody who's Turkish out there, but the big leagues in Europe, England, Spain, Germany, Italy, etc. That makes sense to me. But if we become, I think we want to be certainly as good as the Turkish league or the Portuguese league or the Dutch league. And if we start selling our players in general from MLS to there, I think that's a loss.
But it's what's right for the player too. So and it sounds like some other English teams might have interest in George Bello too. The most important thing for me for George Bello at 19 is that he started his career in the MLS. And if he can at 19 raise his game, because I don't think he will, unless bottom line is, unless you're playing with the best competition, you're not going to elevate your game. So he has to make a move over the pond to elevate his game. So I feel like if that's Turkey, that's okay. It'd be better if it was obviously another
But is the
league.
Turkish league better than the MLS? I mean, I don't know. I mean, their fans are crazier. You know, the big Fenerbahce and Galatasaray. I mean, it's nuts over there. But
I don't know.
outside of those two, I can imagine that Galatasaray and Fenerbahce would come to the MLS and they would compete for the title every year. They're very good teams.
Yeah.
But the rest of the league is not good.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the Turkish league, but I don't know that U.S. soccer's record against Turkey's been that great over the years. So,
well, that's a national team. That's a very different thing.
I know. But you get my point. Well, where was I going to go a second ago? Oh, yeah. So a good loss against Portland the other day, your rival, to FC Austin, who got their first home win. I think it was
so Portland lost that. And Austin.
Yeah. And ex Atlanta United player was John Gallagher, got their first goal ever in the stadium. I don't know if you were able to watch the highlight of that. That was actually pretty cool, Dave, to see him score. And he was actually, when we were in the, drought with Joseph Martinez being out, he was our only guy up front doing anything creative or exciting that I've seen. Again, my problem with Kubo Torres continues. I missed that guy already, and seeing him score for FC Austin kind of has me scratching my head on why we maybe there's some economics there that made us.
Yeah, so MLS has all these crazy rules and, player acquisition. If we get Mikey Dobbs started on it, he'll talk about TAM and GAM, which are the allocation money that you can buy down and blah, blah, blah. Nobody understands it except for Mikey Dobbs. And certainly the podcast listeners, we won't put you through that again. But so do you find, for Seattle, one of the things we've had, because we had success, we won the title, and then we had to sell off a number of our players because of the salary cap, basically. Mm-hmm. So you guys have a different perspective, which is basically winning every year. And so how do you, so I guess my question is, obviously, Seattle's been able to keep some of their big stars when they've done really well. My impression is that true? And have you had to sell off some of the secondary players when you've won titles?
So they have, and they've often sold off some of the fan favorites, of course. So Ozzie Alonso, who was the heart and soul of the Sounders from the inaugural, he was traded to Minnesota United. And I don't know if he's still playing with them or not. The 2019 year, their whole back line disappeared. Ki Kim with a Korean went somewhere else overseas again. Roman Torres, he was down in Miami for a while, I think. Some of those guys, absolutely, they have to do that, and we scratch our heads wondering why. But I'm sure it's a business decision. Yeah. Ultimately, it's
they have a salary cap, so they can only pay a certain amount of salary. So when you win, then the agents come calling and they say, "Oh, we're a winner, and we did X, Y, and Z. We want our raise," which makes sense. Yeah. But then if you give them the raise, then you can't afford to keep them.
They kept a lot of the team, though, which I was really
they've had some players like Roldan and whatever been there for a long time.
Even after 2016, when they won the MLS Cup,
do you think
they kept a lot of those guys.
Do you think that the MLS will shift the designated player rule soon to be 4 or 5 or something like that to open up additional talent from, like the league's been getting from South America or Mexico?
It is interesting. So the designated player rule and much of the whole MLS structure was designed to prevent MLS from collapsing, right? So, when they started MLS, everybody, the thing that was most fresh in their mind was the NASL, right? You probably even remember, growing up in New York, right? The Cosmos, right? Exactly. So, and that league was, like a lightning bolt through the sky, but then it flamed out, right? Because nobody could afford it. They were paying, huge salaries, and the teams were, losing money left and right. So when MLS started, they really did all of these things to try and keep salaries down and whatever to make it affordable so that, the clubs wouldn't go bankrupt. Now, obviously, Atlanta and Seattle are now examples of clubs that are very well supported, huge crowds, really good supporters, lots of people buying jerseys and things. And, you get to the point where there's a lot of pressure on the league to let those clubs go a little bit so that, they can, use that fan base to get a better team. And the interesting thing, so the designated player was designed so that you couldn't buy too many expensive players and basically, that they wouldn't go bankrupt. So I think, they just re-signed the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
And every time it comes up, those things get negotiated, and the players want to have more of those things because as soon as you get more designated players, their salaries go up, then everybody else's salary has to go up, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know how you feel about that. Like,
I know. I was just going to say it's interesting because from the Sounders' perspective, it seems like they always have a spot available for somebody, and that they're always they don't use up all of their designated player spots.
Interesting.
They're always looking, and we're always hoping that they're going to find someone, but we're always kind of left wanting more.
That's really interesting that they don't absolutely feel like they've got to immediately fill the designated player spot.
They don't. Yeah. So
we've had all our designated player spots filled continuously.
Yeah.
Like we never have an over designated. Now that doesn't mean that we can't sign people because they play these MLS games where like right now we have all the designated players filled, but they're talking about bringing in a designated player, and you're like, how is that possible? Well, somebody can become a citizen. They buy down their thing, so they're no longer a designated player.
So I got this weird timer on Zoom. I've got 4 minutes and 40 seconds left for this podcast to wrap up. So I apologize.
Okay. All right. No, that's okay. So I think we should finish with, in the ATL on Fire tradition, we used to ask all of our guests, what was your favorite thing about Atlanta United and what was your least favorite thing about Atlanta United? So I think we'll ask you the same, which
Excellent.
Is what's your favorite thing about Seattle and what's your least favorite?
Oh boy. So favorite thing about Seattle just has to be the atmosphere of going to games. And just the win or lose. Obviously we like winning better, but the atmosphere in those games is just amazing. And by the way, there's nothing better than going to Seattle games away as well. So we've been to a number of games in Portland as well, and they are just they're amazing to go to.
Yeah.
Worst thing.
Is there anything about the club or the stadium or the game day experience that you would change? Like, is there anything negative?
Other than the usual gripes of the stadium of cheaper food, cheaper beer, things like that. It's
actually interesting. We're very spoiled as Atlanta United fans because for whatever reason, Arthur Blank, who owns the stadium, decided that he didn't want any of that. So at the Mercedes-Benz, it's really, so not only do they have all the best restaurants from Atlanta in the stadium, so you're not getting the generic, concession stand thing, but it's also everything is affordable. So a beer at Atlanta United game is like maybe $2-3.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Like a hot dog is a normal hot dog price. I forget what it is, like $1.50 or something like that for a hot dog.
No.
Yeah.
So they have sometimes they have cheap beers where you can buy a Bud Light for $5. And that's their cheap beer. And
we get like fancy local beers for $3.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And if you buy a soda, for example, at Atlanta United, they have refill stations throughout the stadium. You can just refill anywhere. You don't have to go to a concession stand or anything.
So
since we're up and just get whatever you want. It is pretty unique.
Since we're probably not going to beat Seattle this season, I don't even know if we play them. We're going to go out on that high note.
You guys played earlier. We tied 1-1.
1-1. Oh, that's right. We did fly out there. I know.
He's blanking out because of all of our recent results.
I know I'm struggling with the team. Dave, I think I'm right on my prediction. I don't think we're going to be a contender this year, but I still have my fingers crossed. Zoom is about to kick us out for some reason. I don't know why. My subscription or something has changed. So,
All right. Well, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, thank you so much for joining. And
thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good luck this season. And you guys enjoy the rest of the time out there.
We'll see you in the MLS Cup.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see you in Seattle.